Heyo, you're listening to Edge Coach Quip, featuring our very own Edge coaches and community, dropping knowledge nuggets to fuel your day. Hello, and welcome to Coach Quip. I'm Coach Robyn.
I'm Coach Chris, and this is episode 104, Tips for the Busy Athlete.
Listen, there's one thing that all of us have in common, I feel like especially after the world reopened, and that's we're all busy. You ask someone how they're doing, the answer is like, good, been busy, right? Mm-hmm. So we know that most of us listening are training and racing and chasing down these goals on top of working and being a parent and being a spouse and traveling and trying to fulfill all these other commitments, and that's hard, which means we all have a lot going on and all of our time is very, very, very precious, and we need a way to make the training happen and optimize it as we navigate this thing called life. So we asked our Edge coaches, how do we do that? What are our tips for all of these athletes who are so busy? And they weighed in.
The last time we did this was one of my favorite episodes. I think it's just so brilliant to get the voices of all the coaches in these podcasts and such varied ideas. So we are going to bring multiple tips to you today, but we're actually going to start off in this first part in our quip with just one tip. And this tip comes from Coach Worm. If you know him, you love him. And it is develop a weekly schedule that will help you create consistency. I think this is a good one to start off with because without a schedule, you are just at the beck and call of these short pockets of time that you might have at the end of a day. And it is so easy to get wrapped into your work. I mean, I was late showing up to film here today because I was wrapped up in something and time got away from me. So if we are not scheduling our workouts and scheduling our recovery, we are likely to have to compromise down the road and not be able to fit it in. Create a schedule. This will help you have the consistency to create those pockets of time and plan when you will get in your key workouts.
I love it. Stay tuned for the bonus miles because we've got more.
All right, bonus miles. Our first coach tip in the bonus miles comes from Coach Matthew, and it is to schedule recovery commutes on your easy days. This is just an opportunity to get some easy running miles or biking miles in and not tax your schedule. It can count as a recovery workout, and it also cuts down on your commuting time, which is awesome, and it is free, so it also saves you money.
I love that moment when I'm doing these miles and I'm passing cars because they're sitting in traffic. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my favorite. It's like I'm winning on all fronts. I'm saving time, I'm saving money, and guess what? I'm saving gas, too.
Yeah. Next
up, we have Coach Hannah. Identifying your key workouts, right? So which ones are those? The most likely something like speed or distance, and prioritize those, identify them before the week starts and prioritize them so that you know that they will take priority over anything else. We know that the other pieces to your puzzle can probably slide around a little bit, but those key days and those key deposits are more likely to get done. Doing that before the week starts means that they actually do.
Yeah, that's the hybrid of Coach Worm's tip, making sure that you're planning those things out so that you know, and if you don't have those on your schedule, take the time or ask your coach to identify those key workouts for you.
I love it.
All right, our next tip is actually from Coach Robyn, and it is to determine your heavy work periods and in your season and to scale your training and racing appropriately. Can't say this enough. I mean, we often talk about stress, and we in our lives have seasons, right? We may have a very busy work season, we may have a busy travel season, a season for family time, and it's important to know what your year is going to look like, or at least what your next quarter is going to look like, and use that when you're thinking about what your goals will be, what your training will look like, and how you can fit everything in.
Yeah, I just had an athlete that went for like a 10-day vacation, and it was a pretty intense vacation. I mean, it was stateside, but like she was going, like her Instagram, I was following it, right? But we teed up her vacation to have a recovery week, which was great because she literally got back and was able to hit the ground running, pun intended, 24 hours after getting back because she felt pretty refreshed. We didn't overload her as she was resetting.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you have like you're planning a wedding or something in the middle of a heavy training block, or you're on vacation during your peak week.
I will never forget, I had an 18-mile road long run, and I was supposed to be going to one of my best friend's weddings. And it was like a 10-hour drive to get there, and we got there, and it was 95 degrees, and I was just like, oh boy, I should have done this on Wednesday, not trying to do it, and I did it, and I hated it. And I learned my lesson. Yeah. I learned my lesson. That was not the right thing to do. So don't be me, circa 2010. All right, next up is Coach Chris's, which is all about strength training. I think a lot of times athletes, they make strength training into this thing that is this big, scary hurdle, and then it just gets avoided altogether because they're thinking, well, I don't know what to do. I don't have an hour. His is so smart. It's just to break it up so that it happens throughout the day. Something is always better than nothing when it comes to anything, but definitely when it comes to strength training. So, every time you use the bathroom, do 20 squats, right? Or maybe you're standing single leg as you're washing your hands. You're always going to be able to fit in 10 push-ups and a 2-minute plank on the top of every hour. I have an athlete that every 2 hours sets an alarm and will get down and do 2 minutes of core every 2 hours at work because it also prevents him from sitting static. He's like, people think I'm crazy, right? Because I'm doing like oblique leans at my desk, but guess what? He feels better when he gets back into the chair and he's not having to really figure out where to fit in 15 to 20 minutes of core somewhere else.
It all adds up. All right, and our final tip is from Coach Ed to do your research before you're traveling so that you know what you have available to you. As busy people, we often find ourselves on the road, whether it's for work or for fun, and it's really important to stay on your schedule, as was the first tip, to make sure that we have that consistency. So finding out what will you have access to when you are at the location that you're going to. Is it going to be just the roads for running and body weight exercises? Or do you go to a place that has a phenomenal gym? Can you get a membership at somewhere else? You want to know what you have access to so that you can plan to make the changes and accommodations prior to going so that you can stay on track and, just like you did for your athlete, have that either be a down week or make the adjustments that you need to keep your training going.
I also love the idea of planning your routes, right? So we can use things like Strava and see what are the popular running routes or cycling routes or even areas to swim in so that we know ahead of time, especially as a woman that usually has to train solo, what is a heavily traveled route that I might feel safer on, as well as maybe you'll just see other people, right? So it's a quality session and you're not having to reinvent the wheel. Like, these things exist, so use them. You can also get into Facebook groups or even DM run crews that are in the area to see if they have sessions that you can jump in on. All of this to say, you don't have to, these are not the olden days where you just land and kind of hope for the best and run wherever because you don't know any better. We have a ton of tools out there to make sure that you can really effectively and safely train while you travel.
And I think training while traveling is one of the best ways to see a place.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
All right, so let's recap. We have some tips for busy athletes, starting off with Coach Worm, who said, develop a weekly schedule and create that consistency.
Next up, Coach Matthew, recovery commute. So turn your easy runs and your easy bikes into a commute because you're going to save time and money every time.
Then we had Coach Shauna, identify and prioritize those key workouts for the week before your week starts.
Oh, that way it gets done. Next up is one of mine, which is determine your heavy work, life, whatever periods at the start of your season so that you can scale your training during those heavy periods because stress is stress is stress.
Next tip is from me, Coach Chris. Break up your strength training throughout the day. You don't need a whole hour to do it in one block. Just try to squeeze in little bits of strength as you have the time.
And lastly, from Coach Ed, when you are traveling, do your research before you leave so that you know what you have access to and you can safely and effectively train.
Being busy is not an excuse to get off of your training, so we hope that you use these tips to stay on track.
And this one was pretty fast, which was great because you all are short on time.
See you next time.
James!
That was great.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Ment. follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.